Hey everybody, it's Lon Seidman, and I wanted to just give you some random thoughts on the new Star Wars Squadrons game that just came out. It's available on the PC, the Xbox, and the PS4. And I'm not much of a game reviewer, but this is the game I've been waiting for a very long time because I grew up in the 80s. I went to see Return of the Jedi when it first came out in first grade, so this is like part of the fabric of my life, if you will. And I've always wanted to have a game that would allow you to immerse yourself inside these Star Wars fighters and fly around and do missions and everything. And I think EA really got it right here, primarily because they have a virtual reality mode that gives you total immersion if you have the right hardware. And it's great to see this in the game. And for the price point, I think it's adding a lot of value to the mix. Just because there are games that cost a lot more than this one does, and they don't deliver the level of fun that I've been having with this Star Wars game. But there are some things I wanted to talk about that I think will make your experience better and maybe offer some feedback on some observations that I have about the game. We're not going to get into a lot of the details of the game. You can find other reviewers that do a better job at that than me. But I wanted to just give you my thoughts on some ways that you can make the experience better for yourself. The first thing is to get some kind of Hotas set up here, the throttle and stick, because I initially played the game on an Xbox controller, and it was really hard to get the controls working right. They've got throttle mapped to one thing here, and you can also turn the ship on the throttle control, the pitch and yaw. It just was really confusing getting everything to work properly. This felt a lot more natural because I can control the speed with the throttle here and use the joystick to control the craft completely, and it just was a much, much better experience using the throttle here. This one is from Thrustmaster, and I think it's the lowest cost one of these things you can get. It's called Hotas, and there's a version for the Xbox called Hotas 1, and there's another one for the PS4 called Hotas 4, but both of them work with the PC, and they have a switch on them here that lets you switch between them. This older one was designed for the PC or PlayStation 3, but the new one is pretty much exactly the same thing. And you do have to kind of feel around a bit in VR to get your feel for the controls. I also had to remap the thrust control inside of the Star Wars game to the throttle here. But after that was done, it was a lot more easy to control. And I just need to make a few adjustments to the sensitivity on the stick here to get everything set up correctly. So that really was a big change because, again, it was really hard to control things on the Xbox controller. The other thing that I noticed in playing the game is that the VR experience in the TIE Fighter wasn't as good as it was in the X-Wing. And I haven't played through all the different ships yet, but the thing about the TIE Fighter that really kind of bummed me out is that you don't have a wide field of view. So you're almost like in a cockpit looking out a screen because the TIE Fighter, perhaps by its design, even in the movies, only had a big front-facing window and the sides were just blocked with the hull of the spacecraft. You could look up and see things above you, but you really can't get a feel of immersion that you would expect in a VR game. So the TIE Fighter, which is the first craft you fly in the storyline of the game, really was a bit of a letdown. But then when I got into the X-Wing, things looked and felt awesome. The cockpit feels a little more confined than I imagined it would be, but beyond that, you have a very nice field of view. If you look behind yourself, you can see your little R2 unit back there moving around and stuff, and the ability just to be able to track your targets visually and very naturally was exceptionally well executed in the game. And I was really surprised by just how quickly you adapt to playing the game in this way, because I'm used to playing these Star Wars games on a 2D screen and having to move the ship around. Here I can kind of track the target as it's moving out of the initial field of view and just kind of move the ship to match where I'm looking like I would if I was really in a space fighter. And that was a really just fun experience for me, and I'm looking forward to spending more time in the single player mode to get through it all. It's actually a more complex game than I expected. You have a lot of different controls that you have to manage throughout the game. You can adjust your power levels for the shields, the engines, and the weapons, and you have to make those adjustments quite frequently in addition to working with your teammates if you're doing a multiplayer game as well. It's not easy. It's not a pushover kind of game. It does take some time to kind of get into it and understand how things work, and I think that's why you probably want to do the storyline first before you kick things off. As far as VR hardware is concerned, I played it on my HTC Vive Pro, which looked great. I have a much more powerful PC upstairs than I do down here in the studio with my gaming laptop here, but I also played it on the Quest with a PC link cable installed, and it was a pretty good experience here too. So if you are looking at Star Wars Squadrons, I would definitely suggest getting the Hotas stick just because it does make a difference in the gameplay. And I would also look at seriously going down the VR route, even if you are on the PlayStation 4 with the PSVR, because the game really gets this level of immersion that will just be awesome. Even in the TIE Fighter, which has that very limited viewpoint, I think it's still a lot of fun and much more fun to play in VR than it is to play on the screen. And I don't get motion sickness, but I would often feel a little disoriented playing some of these high, fast motion flying games in VR. And I think they've done things appropriately to limit the amount of motion disorientation that you might experience. So if you are someone that gets easily motion sick, I think it's probably something you will want to avoid. But if you feel like you can handle it, I think it's a really well executed game, and I don't think it's going to make you sick. So far I've been doing okay in the VR mode with this Star Wars game, and it's just awesome that they have it. I think back to when I was a kid, the only Star Wars games we had were on the Atari 2600 initially, and there's never been a game that's really gotten to this level before. XWing, the XWing series that was out in the 90s on PCs was close, but it didn't have the immersion that we've got here. And it really is the total package. And I think as computer systems and GPUs get more and more powerful, I'm hoping we'll see additional development investment into games like this to continue to ratchet up the ability to kind of experience these movies again. And the one thing that I really want them to do is release some DLC at some point down the road where you can go in and fight some of the major battles in the films, because that would be really fun to go down the trench from the original movie or do the Return of the Jedi tunnel run into the Death Star. All that kind of stuff would be really fun to see with this game running on this engine. So lots more to come on this. Just wanted to give you my thoughts on it. Till next time, this is Lon Seidman. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold level supporters Tom Albrecht, Chris Allegretta, Mike Patterson, and Bill Pomerantz. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to lon.tv/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit lon.tv/s.